The 1920s was a wild time to be alive. Flappers were dancing to Charleston. Gangsters were ruling the streets and people were getting rich off the back of organized crime. The most infamous of these gangsters was Al Capone, a man whose name has become synonymous with organized crime. This is the only place where you can find out how his ghost continues to haunt Chicago to this day. As someone who has written multiple books about the Mafia, there are very few stories that I haven't heard before. But when it comes to the mob in America, there's always something new to learn. After all, the Mafia's history dates back hundreds of years. So what could I possibly write a book about now? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's me. And today we're going to talk about Ghosts of the Mob. Past Never Die. The story of Al Capone and the Chicago outfit. Welcome back, everyone. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to let you know that I have a podcast. Now, I know some of you have been asking for Unfortunately, I don't have any right now, but I do have a podcast that should tide you over. It's hosted by myself and my friend, and we cover all things Mafia and mob history there. There's no ads or sponsors. We keep it strictly about the mob. And if you want to listen, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. Also, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because that really helps us out. Now, on to today's episode. Al Capone, a name synonymous with organized crime, his face plastered across newspaper clippings from the 1920s to the 40s. He's the character that Hollywood uses to represent the Mafia whenever they want to cast an Italian mobster. In reality, he wasn't even Italian, but the image of the charismatic gangster dressed in a three-piece suit and a fedora remains strong even to this day. But just because his face may be familiar to you doesn't mean that his presence still lingers around Chicago. In the early 1900s, the United States saw the rise of organized crime like never before. With the introduction of Prohibition, organized crime took advantage of the ban on alcohol and filled the void. Of course, there was already a market for illegal substances. However, Prohibition solidified the position of organized crime in the United States and made many millionaires. In Chicago, the big three mob families were led by Johnny Paul Ricca and Frank Nitti. These men, along with many others, ran the city. Of course, they didn't hold any political office, but their word carried more weight than the mayor at times. While they were the leaders of the Chicago outfit, one man rose above them all, Al Capone. Capone didn't come up in the ranks of the Chicago outfit. He didn't work his way up from being a soldier to a capo regime to becoming a boss. No! Capone was brought in by Johnny. When Torrio left the country to live in relative peace in Italy, he left the day-to-day operations of the family to Capone. From there, Capone climbed to the top of the pile and became the most powerful mobster in the city. While Capone was known for his involvement with the Chicago outfit, he was never officially a member. He didn't need to be. He was already running the outfit. Capone's ruthlessness and violent tendencies made him feared throughout the country. And while much of the violence done by the Chicago outfit was kept under wraps, there was one event that stood out among the rest. On February 14th, 1929, 7 members of the North Side Gang were lined up against a garage wall and shot in cold blood. Their crime? Stealing a truck full of beer from a rival gang. A gang that happened to be under the protection of Al Capone. These men had stolen the beer from the South Side Irish gang and sold it to the North Side gang. Needless to say, that didn't sit well with Capone. And after finding out who was responsible, he wasted them. The massacre was the beginning of the end for Al Capone. The media had a field day with this story, and so did law enforcement. From there, Capone became a household name. The only problem for law enforcement was they couldn't touch the man. Even though the Valentine's Day Massacre was one of the most heinous crimes committed at the time, not a single person involved was convicted. Law enforcement didn't have enough evidence to put anyone behind bars. So they went after Capone for tax evasion and sent him to jail. When Capone went to prison, the Chicago outfit continued to thrive. But without the charismatic leader at the helm, the outfit began to fracture. Rival gangs gained power and Capone's empire crumbled. By the time he got out of prison, the outfit had changed. Upon his release from prison, Capone retreated from public life and spent his days playing golf, hanging out with his friends and trying to stay out of trouble. But it was too late. The Chicago outfit wasn't looking for a leader. They were looking for someone to blame. To this day, rumors persist that Capone was behind the St. Valentine's Day massacre, even though he wasn't even in the country when it happened. But those rumors started a fire that still burns today. One of the most visited places in Chicago is the Chicago Crime Commission. Inside, visitors can view artifacts from famous mobsters like Al Capone. That's right! You can go to the museum and see the actual fingerprints of Al Capone. But Capone's ghost isn't just haunting Chicago's most popular museum. There are certain locations around the city where visitors report seeing the ghost of Capone. One such location is the Biograph Theater. According to legend, Capone was watching the premiere of the movie The Man Who Laughs when police entered the theater to arrest him. To this day, people have reported hearing gunshots and seeing the ghost of Capone sprinting down the street. Another location where people report seeing Capone's ghost is the Redhead Piano Bar. The Piano Bar is located in the basement of the Hotel Metro. And according to reports, Capone used to frequent the bar when he was running the Chicago outfit. Some have reported hearing gunshots coming from the basement and then seeing the ghost of Capone running through the hallway. A third location where the ghost of Capone is said to appear is the lobby of the Congress Plaza Hotel. Some believe that Capone was shot in the lobby of the hotel, but records show that he was arrested there, not killed. But regardless, people have reported seeing the ghost of Capone in the lobby from time to time. While these sightings have been reported, there's nothing substantial to link Capone to any of these places other than the fact that he was a powerful mobster. I mean, newspapers loved writing stories about Capone, but most of the stories weren't true. I wouldn't put it past them to fabricate stories about Capone being in certain places when he may have not been there. After all, the papers knew that Capone was dangerous and was wanted by the police, so it would have been easy for them to write a story about him being in a certain place. Then, the police raid that location, hoping to capture the mobster. Needless to say, it's likely that Capone's ghost is just a figment of people's imagination, which is understandable. Even though he may not be haunting the streets of Chicago, the legacy of Al Capone still lives on through the tales told about him. Some believe that Capone's body was never actually buried. Some believe he's hiding in South America somewhere. And some believe that his ghost still walks the streets of Chicago. These tales are just that. Tales? But as long as people tell them, Capone will continue to live on. Even though Al Capone died nearly 40 years ago, his legacy lives on through the stories that are told about him. Whether he haunts the streets of Chicago or not, only the spirits that walk the streets at night know. But one thing is for sure, Al Capone's legacy lives on. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Also, you can find me on social media. Leave me a message, and I'll get back to you. As always, remember John Gotti. The only family I had was my wife and kids in the Mafia.